Great, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today at my second solo show. First time in the front room, which is quite nice. It's cold out, but I appreciate everybody coming in and being here with us today. Alicia, you guys may know her. She's also an artist. She deals with color herself, a lot of abstract. And she's going to help moderate this talk today a bit. So,
yeah, it's fantastic to be here in real life, you know, together in a room, just sort of experiencing the reality of these paintings, which are so cohesive and generous. And there's a wonderful kind of universal that I think we can all sort of tap into. And I think I wanted to start this conversation. The thing that interests me about artists is kind of where they came from and where their story starts. And in Jordan's case, he kind of came from a really culturally rich part of the country with two parents that had kind of disparate talents, I would say.
Yeah. My father was an engineer, and he worked on the space race program. And he designed pieces that are actually in space right now. He passed away when I was very young. And my mom was a graphic designer, so I get the graphic design gut sense of color and design itself. And then the engineering part comes from like the execution, I'd say. So I feel very lucky to have those two strands of DNA.
Yeah, so. and just the idea that you grew up in New Mexico, and you had mentioned also that, well, it sounds like your father had this really amazing constitution as well as your mother, and that your mom would sort of introduce you to these spiritual concepts?
Yeah, so my mom was very spiritualized, as I'd like to say. She looked at many different religions. She was very intuitive with herself. She would read tarot cards, and she actually worked at the military base. So she is a very well-rounded, grounded person in my life. So
And I'm curious, as a young kid, and then I'll get past your childhood and we'll
yes.
move on into the work. But I love the interesting way that the DNA starts to form early on, especially with children. That's like where it seems like truth lies, is how we come up as kids in a way. And I'm curious, as a little boy, when you looked out the window, what was your landscape like? What did that look like?
Well, beautiful vistas, the clouds and the colors. I remember looking at art books that my mom would have around and just see these amazing landscape paintings in there. And I always thought, why do people have these paintings when they could just look outside?
Which, by the way, is New Mexico. I don't know if we've prefaced that yet.
Yeah, New Mexico. So Albuquerque, New Mexico is where I grew up. And then I just had this, I just thought people, you know, I was 5 years old. I just thought the whole world was like that everywhere. And so why not just look outside instead of paint it? And then obviously I got older and I realized, well, that's why you paint it. But I was really mesmerized by the colors. And a lot of people go to New Mexico and see there's lack of color. All it is brown. I disagree with you. There's shades of brown. There's values of brown. There's hues, different hues of brown. And then there's those greens, those silver greens, the bright greens, and it's just a magical landscape. I mean, there's tons of painters who go out there. Georgia O'Keeffe's definitely a big one for that.
I think when I look at your work, and I just have the idea that you were steeped in that as a child, you know, without any kind of preconceived definition of an enchanted landscape or anything. You simply were part of it. And I think that's what really successfully happens here in your work. There's this wonderful kind of achievement of a universal through these, the lexicon of your shapes. I think you've achieved a beautiful gestalt with the colors. I think any one of these we could stop and be transfixed by the way the color is, in its totality, is sort of humming.
Yeah.
But, you know, a little further than the canvas. And I love that you're trying to give the viewer a space to sort of connect with, explain that perhaps. I am not going to explain it, but this sort of idea of the mission with these works.
Yeah, so I'm going to stand up a bit.
Oh, sure.
I would say I get my inspiration from the natural world, but also not just the natural world outside of us, the natural world within us. I'm interested on how, as human beings, we process our reality around us. Obviously, that's through color, and color helps trigger and entice out emotion. And then some of these graphic elements, like the lines, could be a reference to op art, but to me, it's more of like an experiment of experience through visual lines being a straight line. I find this very interesting because it's a straight line, and straight line we were always told that it's the truth, it's the shortest distance. As soon as you put a gradation with it, it starts vibrating. And so I'm causing a reaction to your brain that doesn't understand what's happening because our biological, as we evolved, our brains were interested in fractal designs of nature. As soon as you introduce a straight line, it tries to figure out what is it saying. It's a prediction machine. It's trying to figure out why isn't it a fractal, and so that's why it wiggles the way it does. And I'm just so fascinated by that.
Yeah, I think there's a really beautiful line in your artist statement here that the elements reflect the processes within our bodies that enable us to perceive and connect with the world. And I personally, just as a cog in the wheel, I feel like maybe there's a deficit of that going on these days. So any opportunity to sort of like find the path back to nature or find the path to consciousness is such a wonderful tonic. And I think that you've just really blown this out of the water with what you've done here, and it's so beautiful.
Thank you.
So let's see. So I guess I was curious about your why, or when you're out in the world and you're investigating. Is this are you motivated by things that you see in the world, or is this more of an internal?
Oh yeah, no, motivated by how sun reacts through a leaf when it shines on it, or just the contrast of colors. I love looking at the night sky. Has a lot of colors that will show itself. At one point in my life, I worked a graveyard shift, and that was an amazing experience because you got to see the world in a completely different way that the majority of people didn't experience. I want to just go back to you taking a moment in the world. I just also want to say, with the circles, obviously there's a lot of circles in it. The circles mean several layers to me. One, it's about meditation, so there's like a spiritual essence that comes to the work that way. There's a literal concept to the circle. There's the idea of biology that comes with the circle. Let it be a single cell organism, or let it be the idea of space and a planet, and just it's everything. And then like the wood grain is an important aspect to the work because it shows this medium or this substrate was a living organism at one point, and it's dead, so it refers to the circle of life, and now it's been recreated to show a different life that it has.
You disconnected your sound.
The mic. That's the wrong kind of mic drop. Is it working now? And if it doesn't, that has my content on it. All right.
And I think what, as a fellow maker, like the thing that really impresses me here is that I find it really difficult not to get into tight spots where I want to get very literal, or, I want to, I'll just add a little something more. But you've been able to sort of make this almost like an egoless proposition to me.
That's generous.
There's just this kind of welcome, very open space to kind of come in and experience the works, which isn't easy to do, to keep it broad and not get into tight corners. And so with regards to your process, I love that you're using like this once living substrate. It does kind of give this kind of mercurial read. it starts to vibrate as well. I've noticed that you're using some interference pigments.
Yep.
Explain your, choice of materials.
So, first off, color is a big deal, as you guys know. The high contrast between colors, I love it. It has a zizz to it, I like to say. Like this one just I have this, I don't know if anybody's heard of the phrase synesthesia. It's when you hear something and you see a color, or vice versa. And so a lot of times when I look at these, I also hear sound. And I think with some of these, there's like an ohm sound maybe, possibly from that, or to me. And back to your question about the interference and the glitter, I am using that to engage the light, because that is another type of particle that is in our reality. And so it wants to, I guess to me, the painting wants to recognize that it lives in something other than just the wall. It also needs to interact with the light. And throughout the day, some of these paintings will change throughout the day, because the day light changes color, and you'll get that nice shift, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and I'm curious, there's like this kind of great sort of desire and pull to kind of come back to these ideas of consciousness and meditation.
Yeah.
I think we all sort of had this wonderful groundswell with the passing of David Lynch.
Yeah.
But this seems to me like this has been a long practice of yours, a lifelong practice of yours. Is this kind of...
Yeah, we used to go hiking when I was younger with my sister, and just being in nature, you find like this meditation in nature, especially with your footsteps. It's a rhythm, and the silence out there, and you really get to like experience the consciousness that's around you, the living trees that are around you. I've been investigating and reading about fungi and how that it is a magnificent, it's not an animal, it's not a plant, it's a whole other thing, and the relationships with trees that is out there. And so I've been reading a lot about consciousness and what consciousness is, and I find it really remarkable because there's a study there's this passage in a book I was reading that was talking about consciousness. It was talking about the Venus flytrap. And one thing that's really amazing about plants, they don't have a nervous system like us, and so it's hard to believe that they may have a consciousness, right? But as soon as a flytrap, the way a flytrap works, it needs to trigger a hair. An insect needs to trigger a hair. And once that hair is triggered, okay, big deal. The second hair triggered, the plant closes and eats the ant. So what's really interesting about that is that that plant needs to remember that that first hair was triggered. How does it remember? So to me, that's like an outer, bigger consciousness that's happening. I don't understand it, and I think for some of the work, it leans into that as well.
Yeah, I definitely see that. It's interesting because I get that there's this kind of maximalist thinking you've got going on, but again, you're able to sort of like create this broad sort of lexicon that if anyone sort of had these wonderings, or perhaps it's an invitation to get there, you're using these as like a signifier or an entry point, or like a pulse, and it's just a really beautiful thing to kind of give to the world right now.
And a lot of the titles are like breadcrumbs that kind of hints towards what it's supposed to mean.
Yes.
For instance, like this red one, I believe it's called Carry Oxygen, and I think it's pretty obvious what that becomes to me in the end. It's how we live, it's how we breathe, but then you can see that it's also a landscape from the grain, and it's just a portal. I'm trying to give people a space for reflection on existence, what it means to be here for yourself, to be with people, family, and friends.
Yeah, I love that when you kind of walk past them. We did a studio visit, and there was just a piece on the wall, and it just sort of flickered on the side, and it was just sort of this eye-catching moment. So it was kind of a nice way to just sort of, in a way, ground yourself. You come back to that visual, and you're reminded, like, yes, nature, peace, centeredness, like these things. So, and each and every single one of these gives you that, generous, minimalist, clean kind of entry into that.
Yeah,
So,
I want that minimalist. I want that silence to come. When I was talking about the synesthesia, that one over there, and this, to me, these ones just kind of, and these are kind of like the idea of relationships between people, seeds, cells, and the titles of these is, I forget what they're called, sorry. May I see that real quick?
yeah, there's a poetry to the titles.
There's a gap in between, there's a gap where we meet, and that, you'll see here, there's a breathing space there, and then and where you end and I begin, and so it's like, these relationships, and they're very slight, very, very slight, and I love that tension there. It's a very cool thing.
And yeah, these also, I think
Thank you
it's,
for that.
oh yeah, the titles are great. The sea to send, swimming in the ether, the void still has a shape and color. So you're
Yeah, this one's the void still has shape and color. This one is a body movement. Eat the moon and breathe the sun. Tectonic and nature never shows itself twice or something like that. And that's basically an idea, philosophy idea of like you never step in the same river twice because every day is a different day. It feels mundane, it feels like the same old day, but every day is pretty amazing that we get to be here.
yeah. So the show has all these great kind of Easter eggs for people to kind of discover and sit with each piece. But like, so I was curious, what sort of wowed you lately? What is something that sort of?
I think that fly Venus plant having memory that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And so, in say 50 years or 100 years, where would you like these, or how would you like these to land?
With people who care. I don't know. That's a good question. In a million years, I'd like for them to be back on the ground, or recycled into whatever they need to be, I don't know. It's a very good question. I want people to sit with them and breathe it in and breathe it out and feel comfortable with them and be challenged by them and see that they're not just lines, that they're not just color. Like, what is it? And everybody's going to have their own personal experience because we all have a whole history of what color means to us. I mean, my history is New Mexico. That on the wall right there with all those squares on it is, to me, New Mexico. That's my idea of what the Zia symbol is. It's on the New Mexican flag. And, the New Mexican flag is a very simple design. And I think that's probably where I started to get my inspiration from, because it's a circle, and then sunbeams with 4 bars this way, this way, this way, this way, and 2 colors, red and yellow. Very simple. But on top of that, what the Zia symbol means, and I have to look this up because I want to get it correct. And I love this, and this is just basically a good belief system. So the Zia symbol comes from the Zia Pueblo people. And so 4 is a sacred number to them. And so the 4 directions, 4 sacred obligations are a strong body. So there's sun rays, and there's 4 bars on each sun rays. So the 4 sacred obligations: a strong body, a clear mind, a pure spirit, and a devotion to others. The 4 directions, obviously, north, south, east, and west. The 4 seasons, we all know about that. And then the 4 stages of life: infancy, youth, adulthood, and old age. And then the circle in the middle, which I think is awesome, symbolizes unity and eternal life. It's just
Those are very pure,
Yeah.
pure goals
Yeah.
and things to hold up. I like too when you sort of explore the ideas of different ways that people approach trying to find spiritual ascension. There's a really wonderful thing happening in Rajasthan. A book came out called Tantra Meditations, and it's a series of shapes that
Oh yeah, you've mentioned this. Yeah. You shared that some pictures with me on that. Yes.
We started that sort of a quasi-conversation there, but it was nice because it's the idea that these very basic shapes are passed on generation to generation, and with really rudimentary materials, people are taught the practice of repeating these shapes. They might be an oval, or they might be a triangle, but generation after generation, they come to that place of meditation. And I think what I really love is that you're a Western artist, but you're sort of emphasizing this simplicity and giving us this really fresh, coming back to this lexicon, that is really, has so much meaning in science and in spiritualism. So it's not just a circle, it's really loaded. And I think, once we kind of open ourselves up to that, these can give and give and give. It's very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, the circle was an ancient symbol, right? I mean...
So it's nice to come back to it, refine these things, get back to these basics, at a time that really feels like we want that clean honesty.
Yeah, I dig that, yeah. Is there any particular painting you wanted to talk about or dig in deeper?
Let's see. Well, I should ask you that question. I mean, this one has like a more classic, or almost like there's like a strong reference.
Yeah. So that's a good one. So there's these objects in New Mexico that two Pueblos make, and they mean different things to both Pueblos, but it's called a Kachina doll. And at first I saw that kind of as like a Kachina doll in a headdress, but to me it's also about earth and air and land, and the title of that piece is called The Red Cloud Rains and the Black Horse Rides. I'm going to just walk through that real quick. In some of the native pottery, you'll see these streaks here that represent rain or rain clouds. And to me, I see this as the center face, and maybe this is a headdress if someone was standing in front of it. I don't know, it just has a personal reference to New Mexico for me, and it happened just to come to be this. The red represents blood. It also represents the clay of the earth. Obviously, we have the shape of the globe, and then the sky, and the separation of earth, land, and then space up here, just where, I don't know, maybe the gods live up there, I don't know. Somebody's got lives there. So.
And so is there a piece that you feel is the most successful for you, or kind of lands and carries you into your next body of work?
Yeah. Judy's right. It's this pink one over here. That has just basically three colors in it: pink, blue, and yellow. And if you get up in there and see that yellow is kind of puky. And I feel like that color should not belong. But also when you see it from far away, and this goes back to the brain being tricked, it's looking at that yellow and that pink. And sometimes you'll see another color vibrate between the pink and the yellow. It could be orange. I mean, right now I'm seeing a little bit of a sherbet orange kind of vibrating off of that. And then between the pink and the blue, there's almost like this white line that kind of sizzles off of it. And I love how, I hate to use the word manipulation, but I'm not trying to manipulate your vision or your reality, but that's just how your brain is built.
Yeah, it again comes back to that idea of the gestalt, like the sum of this, it starts to vibrate a little, further than the canvas, and it really starts to give through the science of color, and strong observation on those things.
One last thing I also want to add to this. One thing, okay, so the circles also represent cells, biological cells, obviously. particles. And so for this one, I always see this as like outer space, or maybe you're looking in a microscope and this is the building blocks of life, biology. It's just, I don't know. I can really dig into it and kind of talk too much about it, so.
Can I ask you
Yes,
something
ma'am.
right now while we're on here and over here?
Yeah.
There are a lot of artists here and about your process. And first of all, I need a comment. Your color choices are just amazing. How much in the process do you think this all out first, or do you allow later on, once the pink layer is on, to do the yellow layer? I mean, how much of this is set in stone before you even start? Because I've seen your process and it's quite, you've got to mask a lot of things straight over the place. So how much flexibility do you give yourself?
A lot of flexibility, because if I'm not flexible, then I get cranky. I have to be flexible because some of the work is so precise. If there's a little divot in it, I used to get really upset about it and be like, gotta start this piece over again. And I've learned to, you just go with it. And I think a lot of artists in here, even if you're not an artist, in your life, how many mistakes you've made and how that mistake became a really good thing in your life. Same with art making. That mistake happens, it becomes something good. Now, to answer your question about what comes first, I thought the grain comes first for some of these, a lot of these. I see the grain, I listen to the grain. I know this sounds weird, but I just get an intuition of what it wants to be, and then I start investigating what that means, and so then I'll start putting down color on it as a wash, and figuring out what that looks like, how heavy do I want it, how much does it want to reveal the grain, how much it needs to, does it need more color, does it need the blue, does it need a little bit of red in there, and I'll start doing that. And then I'll sit back, sit there and contemplate, I'm feeling pink, there's a pink in there. And so then I go do pink, and sometimes when I'm just working there, I'll see, I guess the best way to explain it, an aura. It's not really an aura, but it's an aura. So I'm like, yes, okay, I hear you, you want yellow. Boom, there's your yellow. Yeah, it's just nothing's jiving. I need something a little pumpy. Blue. And then I'm like, all right, that's great. And then I take, some of this is masked off, and if it's not perfect, I get really upset if there's a bleed underneath or whatnot, and then I have to rework something. Sometimes if that happens, I might have to put another yellow line in there just to break it up, to cover up that mistake. And then sometimes it's a very happy mistake that happens. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
So
perfect.
Jordan, this isn't a meditative process, though. I mean, it doesn't sound meditative at all. So we have the joy of being able to meditate with it.
Yeah, well, there's times where I meditate, and I do a lot of meditation as I'm falling asleep. And Lisa and I will sometimes go swimming, and sometimes I'll just sit there and float with my eyes closed. And I listen to my heartbeat when my ears are underwater, and I just see shapes. I just start seeing shapes. And that's my meditation. It's interesting. When I first started meditating, it was really hard to do it because my brain is all over the place, and the chatter, and it's just, even 5 minutes is hard to do it. Now I'm up to a half hour. And once you get over that first 10 minutes, you start feeling this clarity. And within the clarity, you start feeling your pure essence, and your pure essence will reveal what it wants to do to me. And that's how I started painting all this stuff. A lot of you have known me Lisa and I have been out here for 12 years, and a lot of you were like, I didn't know you were an artist, because I stopped painting when we moved here. COVID happened, and it kicked back up again. That's when I started meditating, and that's when it really came out.
I love that the essence can be maintained even though there might be a baptism of fire, maybe a few curse words while getting the technical aspects down. And out comes the piece.
Well, what's interesting, this is a good example of a bad mistake. So the wood grain with the graphite here, I discovered that through, I did some work on a little painting and I ruined it, so I decided to start sanding it down to give it a new life, and I'm gonna repaint it and regesso it or whatever. And boom, did that grain look amazing. I'm like, that mistake led to this. And yeah, okay, there you go. I gotta get some water.
I'll get you water.
Thank you.
So yeah, it'd be great to get more questions.
Yeah, yes.
I'm truly happy to hear you talk about synesthesia, because I thought I was the only one who could do that. And in a sense, you've got the music of the spheres going, and I like that, especially with that one. You can hear that.
Oh, yes,
and
nice.
it really, really works. And another question. Oh yeah, this is a total aside. Have you read Carlos Castaneda?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, of course. But I read it longer. But because when I saw a lot of these, I was thinking about the desert and the idea of hallucinations. And are they really hallucinations, or are we really just seeing something beyond? And I like that about your work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's like, what's that feel like to you? Is it a truth or is it not a truth?
Exactly.
Speaking of hallucinations and like seeing things and how your brain is trying to guess constantly, the prediction machine. After I read this one book called The Prediction Machine, it was really interesting. We have a cat named Gary, a little black cat, and we've all had this experience. You have a pet, you're walking around your house, you see something, thank you very much, you see something in the corner of your eye and you're like, okay, that's my pet. That's my pet. And you look over and oh, it's just your pile of clothes. That was your brain trying to figure out what's it seeing over here in the corner, and that's a hallucination, right? But it's not, but it is, because it's your clothes. But so anyhow, that goes back to an evolutionary intuition to not be attacked from a lion next to you. So your brain's always trying to guess what is around you, which I find very fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. You have a question?
Oh, sure, I do. Well, I was wondering what, if there's any particular kinship with sort of forebears from art history that you feel?
Yes, Agnes Martin. Oh my gosh, now I'm put on the spot. Hold on, I know this. I should have wrote those down. I knew I was going to be asked.
What about Albers? No?
Color theory wise, yeah, but I know there's squares. Absolutely, absolutely. Color theory, yes, I definitely put him in there. Lisa, come on, help me. You and I talk about this stuff.
Well, you like the mystics. You like Hilma af Klimt and,
Judy
you know,
Chicago
like
I really
that.
like too,
Yep.
because she does all those wonderful gradients.
Judy Chicago.
I'm sorry, did you say
Hilma af Klimt.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of, you know, semi-mystical abstraction.
Symbolism, yeah.
Yeah, so those are some, yeah. I really like Lisa's work too.
I see Sonia Delaney a little bit,
Yep.
Oh,
especially in that one.
yeah, right on, nice, yeah. Yes.
Forgive me if somebody else asked this question, but I've heard you talk about wood grain a lot, and I love the different effects. But you have lots of other materials that you're putting into these pieces.
Yes.
How do you decide what you want to, you can choose, you know, from,
Going back to,
and what story do they tell you, right?
I'll talk about this one real quick. Yeah, I mean, iridescence tells me a story of having the light come in. So this one's called Reading You Loud and Clear, or it's just called Loud and Clear. And it's basically, I see it as like your inner voice speaking to you and you being able to listen. And it's almost like a TV screen that it's always on, there's always a buzz there, but do you choose to pay attention to it or move away from it? But it lays in this void. So the iridescence I spoke about because it's reflection of light and it interacts with the day. And I guess the paint is just the pigment to show what I can talk about through color, honestly.
Sorry. Going to the airport.
Yes. Good luck.
Congratulations.
Safe travels.
Go see my show.
Yeah. Cheers.
I'm curious how much of your impulse to make is driven by logic or intuition?
Wait, say that again?
These are so technically well done, but I'm always curious, well, you know, this idea of the evocation of magic in a way, I'm just curious how much of your work is driven by intuition or logic?
That's a very good
I
question.
would do, well, it depends what day it is, I think. I think intuition is for the colors and what it's going to start off to be, but then logic comes in when I start mapping out the shapes, but logic really leans in when it comes to the purpose. Like, why do I do this? And where I get my inspiration from, nature is just full of inspiration. And with all the new discoveries of brain science, it's just forever information.
Do you have some top 3 scientists or authors or even spiritualists that you would recommend?
Yes.
Rick Rubin.
Yeah, Rick Rubin.
Because the
Yeah.
peanut gallery is telling you what you listen
Yeah,
to.
Rick Rubin. He gets the idea of meditation and creation. I have to actually look up my books that you're just talking about because I'm terrible with names and I can't remember anything. But the books I'm reading right now is The Entangled Life, and that's basically about how mushrooms and fungi communicates with the world and with trees, and just how they're part of everything, and how the fact that this is one thing I got from that book. The fact that we have all this bacteria in our guts and it affects our moods, and that we're made up more of that bacteria than of our own cells, blows my mind. That's another thing that blows my mind recently.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
The micro-macro.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Existence.
Exactly.
You know, I noticed I think there are only 2 works in here that aren't squares. Maybe there are more. This one here and
Yeah.
this one over there.
And then there's one at the very end. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So 4 non-squares.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have much more in my studio, but this is the ones they wanted.
Yeah. No, well, I'm interested in the square because the square is probably one of the most challenging things to do. But you know, when you're doing the circle and the square and you know all that, I mean, it's sort of a perfect equilibrium. So when you're painting like this,
It's true.
Sense of
Yeah.
sacred geometry.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
energy stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's kind of the square
Absolutely.
is, I mean, it's sacred.
Yeah, and it's funny too, Allison, that you say that, because I have some at home that are this shape, and I draw a line down it, and then there's a whole painting in the square area, and a whole different painting, and
yeah,
so it's like I can't avoid it for some reason.
yeah.
What I also really love about these is this idea that it's the 21st century, we have the painting, but then there's this thing that happens with the digital soul of an
Yeah.
object.
Yeah.
And these really sing as a digital presentation. So to see the catalog or the essay you've written here digitally is awesome. It's so nice, you know, when we're in these intimate spaces looking at that through the screen. You know, it's got great digital
Yeah,
soul.
thanks, that's good to hear. Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I know we can keep on talking, but I'll take one more question or 2 more questions if there's anything. Going once, going twice? All right. Bravo, bravo. Being part of it. I appreciate your